Hey guys, welcome back to the Nourish Woman podcast, episode 24. This week's podcast is all about how you can tighten your calorie intake without actually having to track your calories. For so long, I believed that the only possible way anyone could either lose weight or maintain their weight was by counting calories. And for those of you that have worked with me previously, you may have worked with me at a time when I would have given you a calorie target, protein target, a carb target, a fat target. And then I moved on to realizing actually, okay, it's protein and it's color that's important. So we only need those targets. But for the longest time, not only did I personally believe, but I was a coach that believed that people had to track their calories in order to be able to achieve weight loss firstly, but make it sustainable and long lasting. And here's what happened. Firstly, I became absolutely exhausted, like mind-numbingly exhausted of counting calories, where I used to wake up and think, if I have to open that bloody app one more time and put my food in and try and make sure it all matches up, like it felt exhausting to me on a deep down soul level. So then I started to move away from it. And then what I also noticed is that the people that I was coaching were doing amazing when they actually counted calories. They were fantastic. They made sure the numbers matched up and so on and so forth. However, the minute the weekend came or the minute they would stop coaching with me, there were no actual behaviour shifts. So they would just go right back to where they were to start with. And nothing really lasted. It was a real unstable foundation because they were just putting things into the app, making it work, but there was no kind of actual deep down behaviour change, which is the one thing that's actually required for anything to be long lasting. And I saw this over a number of years where I'd help someone, it seemed like they were doing fantastic, they wouldn't work with me, and then all of a sudden they'd be like, hey, I'm struggling. And I think, why is this happening? I legitimately and genuinely want to help people to change their behaviour and to improve their relationship with food and lose body fat for life. I want it to be a forever thing. And then I started to realise that calorie counting is wonderful in terms of the education that you can gain from it. I'm definitely not against calorie counting. It's very hard to make educated decisions around nutrition if you've had no nutrition education, and most of us haven't received sound nutrition education from school. Most of us haven't received sound nutrition education from our parents, so it's actually very difficult then to make sound nutrition decisions. So I do think that it has a place, but it definitely becomes a comfort blanket and it becomes something that people rely on until it's no longer helpful and then they don't do it. Or it becomes something that can be quite triggering for people and really drives them to hyper focus on numbers. So anyway, I moved away from that and I moved my whole coaching program and structure to a place where it's not quite intuitive eating, because we are trying to create a calorie deficit, because most of the people that I work with have a fat loss goal, and intuitive eating is completely intuitive. It's not trying to create a calorie deficit. It's literally eating to exactly what your body is communicating with you. So it's not intuitive eating, but it's this middle space where you have the education and the understanding around nutrition, but you also don't need to count and track everything. And diet culture has literally made calorie counting seem like it's the only possible way that weight loss can be achieved, which just isn't the truth. It absolutely, there is this whole middle space where we can make conscious, intentional food choices without tracking every calorie, but also without veering over to, okay, I'm just gonna eat everything. So today, I'm going to speak to you about a couple of ways that you can quote unquote tighten your calorie intake without actually having to count your calories. Now, the number one way that I would say, and the number one thing that I see, and what I would say is the easiest swap, but I'm a non-coffee drinker, so maybe I would say that, is liquid calories. And I really want you to just sit and pause on this, right? How many liquid calories do you think you consume in a day and in a week? And just kind of mentally tally through them, like coffees, fizzy drinks, energy drinks perhaps, alcohol, juice drinks. What would that look like for you? Like, is it 1 a day? Is it 3 a day? Is it 4 or 5 a day? Because they massively tally up over a week. And if you can try and switch to things which are like 0 calorie drinks or as close as, you can literally, quote unquote, save yourself 1,000 calories just by switching what you are drinking. The second thing is that I really want you to be mindful around is your fat intake. Now, for the longest time, we've lived in a place with diet culture where it's tried to demonize fat. Like we've got things like Slimming World where it makes you sin fat. So people have a really tumultuous relationship with fat usually. But fat is integral for all of us. As women, we need it for our hormones. As men, they need it for recovery, for muscle repair. It's essential that we all do eat some fat. However, fat is 9 calories per 1 gram of fat, as opposed to protein and carbohydrates, which are 4 calories. So fat is much higher in calories per gram than protein and carbohydrates. So we do want to be mindful, and areas that we can be mindful is around the portion size and the volume that we have in. So often I see people have a portion of peanut butter, and that portion actually looks like a dessert spoon of peanut butter as opposed to a teaspoon of peanut butter. Sometimes people will free pour their olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, which is fantastic for you, but free pouring it all over your foods is actually going to amount to quite a lot of calories. So just being mindful about this and thinking, okay, can I just use like a thumb size amount of peanut butter? Can I use a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil? Or can I choose where I'm going to have my fats? And if I'm eating nuts and fish and having extra virgin olive oil a number of times a week, can I actually change sometimes to the 1 cow spray? We're trying to find a balance here. We don't want to veer into the diet culture water of everything has to be no fat, everything has to be low calorie. But equally, if we're trying to lose body fat, we have to find a way which works for us of lowering our calorie intake. And these small tweaks can actually add up to quite a large number over the course of a week. The next thing I would say is cook smart. So there's going to be ways of cooking like air fry, grilling things, baking things that are going to be so much lower in calories than deep frying or pan frying or basting or cooking in heavy white cheese sauces. So the way that we cook the food is also going to be super helpful in reducing the calorie content of the food. The next thing that I would say is carb stacking. Now, carbs aren't inherently bad. We've been told time and time again, don't eat carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are bad. Carbohydrates are fundamental for our energy. We're going to feel exhausted and we're going to feel extremely miserable if we don't consume carbohydrates, and we're going to be drained. And if you're somebody that trains in the gym, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. So we do want to make sure we're including carbohydrates. But if we're on a fat loss journey, we don't want to do what I call carbohydrate stacking, which I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a curry and you have a rice and you also have a naan and then you also have poppadoms. They're all carbohydrates. They're all carbohydrate sources. Ideally, when we're on a fat loss journey, we want to have one form of carbohydrate and the rest of the plate we want to fill with protein and vegetables so that we've got a lot of volume and so that we do actually feel full. And that's a real easy, quick tweak to make. Another way or another place that I often see this is when people have a pasta dish and then they have garlic bread on the side. The pasta is carbohydrates, so too is the garlic bread. If you can make a decision to have one or the other, you can cut back, save, however you want to word it, a few hundred calories there, which in a week all adds up and is super, super helpful when you're on a fat loss journey. The last one that I would say is carb swaps. So a thick slice of tiger bread, which I absolutely love, versus a wrap, or a thick bagel versus a bagel thin. Trying to make swaps so that actually you're eating the lower calorie carbohydrate as opposed to the higher calorie carbohydrate, like new potatoes or a jacket potato that's been baked in the air fryer versus roast potatoes that have been cooked in the oven in goose fat. Things like that. That all of those suggestions that I've said across a week actually make a massive difference in your calorie consumption, and you won't have had to count one single calorie. And that's without even veering into alcohol. If we look at alcohol, wine and champagne and kind of higher calorie drinks versus a spirit with a 0 calorie mixer, or now we can get the trip drinks. Put it in a nice glass, put some fruit in there, put some ice in there. you can still give yourself that experience, but it's way less calories. So all of those things are going to make a big difference in your calorie intake over a week, and you literally won't have had to count a calorie. And this is so important, because if you want to not only lose weight, but if you want to lose weight and maintain it, you're going to have to do it firstly in a way that actually works for you, so that you're not absolutely hating the whole experience, and secondly in a way that it doesn't have you pulling out your whale scales and entering your food into MyFitnessPal or Nutracheck at age 80. This may sound harsh, but so often I started to view calorie counting apps as like an abdication of responsibility. We're putting in the app because we don't want to take the responsibility to make our own informed choices and say, this is on me and I'm going to learn to do this without the use of any app or anything telling me the numbers. And you will live a much freer, fulfilling, happy life if half of your brain space is not taken up trying to make numbers match on MyFitnessPal. And the last thing I want to talk to you about, and my clients will be so tired of hearing me bang on about this, but this will be the hill that I die on, is mindful eating. We literally, as a society, as a culture, consume hundreds of extra calories per day because we do not pay attention, because we're on our phone, because we're working at the same time, because we're watching TV, because we're binge watching Netflix, because we're watching a podcast, because we're watching YouTube. We are so distracted, and when we eat distracted, we can literally eat thousands of calories extra in a week. So the number one thing that I would say, if you're on a fat loss journey and you really want to make progress, pay attention when you are eating. It's so easy to miss fullness cues when we're not paying attention, and the cue to finish becomes that our plate is finished. But we may have been finished and we may have had that feedback from our body way earlier if we were paying attention and if we weren't so distracted. So mindful eating can be an absolute game changer. And that's just in terms of the calorie consumption. When we take into consideration how much more we actually enjoy the food when we are paying attention, it's through the roof. How much more present we feel. Even psychologically, we register that we've eaten. We've probably all had those scenarios, I know I have, where we've been eating distracted. I've eaten a bag of crisps and I'm eating distracted. And then all of a sudden I go to get some more crisps and I'm like, hold on, when the hell did I finish those? Because I've not been paying attention. So now, even though I know, intellectually I know I just ate those crisps, I don't feel satisfied, I don't feel satiated, and psychologically I don't really feel like I'm done eating because I wasn't paying attention. So if you're on a fat loss journey, alongside all of those other tips that I told you about really being able to kind of tighten your calorie intake, the number one thing that's going to make the biggest difference is you starting to pay attention when you eat. You starting to put your phone down, turn off the TV, don't listen to a podcast, eat slowly, really look at the food, like smell the food, notice the different textures, notice the different flavors. That on its own has the capacity for you to be 1,000 or more calories less each week just by tuning in and being present. And for me, mindful eating isn't just about calorie consumption or reducing calorie consumption. Mindfulness in and of itself, to me, is like the essence of life. We miss out on so many moments because we are not paying attention. This is so important to me in my life. I even got it tattooed on my arm to remind me to be where my feet are, because I can't actually be anywhere else. So if I'm physically in one place but mentally in 5 others, I'm not really in that one place that I am. So it's not just a way of eating, but actually it's a way of experiencing life that, in my opinion, and I'm definitely not perfect at it, but it actually just enhances everything that you do. It slows you down, it allows you to be present, and it really allows your cup to be full up far more easily because we're present in the moment and we're not constantly looking at the next thing or thinking about the 5 things that we do when we need to get home and then getting to bed and thinking, right, okay, tomorrow I've got to do this, 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 this and this. If we can slow everything down, if we can be in the moment, if we can enjoy where we are, if we can be where our feet are, because that is actually the only place that we can be. Not only do we experience lower calorie consumption, which makes fat loss far easier, but we actually experience a more joyful life all round. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, please message me and I look forward to picking up with you next week.